All right, get ready. In 1996,
Galapagos.
I can't wait. I've been hearing Chris read out loud a lot recently, and it's been so
stories.
funny.
Don't make fun of me before. I thought you liked my reading. Why do you hate my reading?
One was like, I don't even remember what the original, but it became arms swinging with anxiety. And that's not what it said on the page.
Shut up. All right. In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Catherine Applegate, whoa, I didn't realize that was her name, and her husband, Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, wow, this is blowing my mind, produced 54 main series books, series spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult following. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names, but we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on the series book by book. I'm Miranda.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Eddie.
And we are
the Anidorks.
These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
I don't think that Chris has listened any time that we read this, because this seemed to be Chris's first time experiencing it.
I'm a fresh little baby goldfish looking at the world for the first time.
Chris was like listening to the beats, you know what I mean? Like to the ups and downs and the flow of the words and like, oh, that's nice. But they weren't like retaining any of the information.
Yeah. It's like, they sound great right now. I wish I knew what they were saying.
What did everyone think of the third book?
Thought it was okay.
What?
It was pretty amazing.
Bitch.
No, it's the best one so far. It's by far the most dark and entertaining, and we found out that Rachel's book was very dark and entertaining as well. But this one is off the chain. This one is insane.
I couldn't believe some of these things were in here, like that this was considered okay to give to children. Like, not that it's not, just like, when I think of the things adults were hiding me from, there's really frank discussions of, like, thoughts of suicide and, like, body dysmorphia and, like, it's just, wow.
Yeah, it's a very dark book. So I guess a content warning going into this for anyone listening. It gets really dark.
Also, it didn't occur to me until this time to remember that when Tobias is in a red-tailed hawk in this book and he goes hunting, imagining like this is actually a 12-year-old eating an animal alive. Like, for some reason I was like, it's a bird, even though it's Tobias. Then I'm just imagining 12-year-old Tobias the human eating an animal alive.
Because that's how he feels.
Yeah.
Right.
I just can't wait at this point. I thought Tobias was the best narrator so far.
Yeah.
I felt like it was like such a departure from like Jake in the first book, where I felt like just like a way of describing like external events. Like, I don't feel like we got much interiority with Jake.
Yeah, Jake was very like fact-based.
Yeah. This is like, Tobias has a whole moral struggle here.
Yeah, it's a very feelings-forward book, too, which is like, it doesn't shy away from the problems it has started to pose, like, with its world building. Like, these things, which seem cool on the surface, but when you think about them could be intensely traumatic, they're not shying away from the fact that they are intensely traumatic.
Yeah.
And to have that already be going on in book 3 is, like, pretty wild.
As I wrote somewhere in the first chapter, birds can't smile and boys don't cry. And that's, I feel like, sums up the whole book.
Oh, do we want to do our 3-sentence summaries?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I got it. I'll do one sentence.
I'll do 2, and then Miranda, do you want to do 3?
Sure, I can try. Okay.
You don't have to use all 3. You can give one of your sentences to somebody else.
Can I bank my sentences for the next book?
Yeah.
We use it at the tribal council. Eddie had me watch a whole season of Survivor.
I was doing a weakest link, so there you go.
Nice, yeah. Bank! Anytime I make money freelancing, I just shout bank when the check comes.
Okay, resident freak Tobias,
Nice.
now a hawk, struggles to maintain his personhood in a series of trials, period. His friends try to help him see the human inside, but he wonders if it might not just be easier to go with the instincts of his animal form, period. But when trouble rears its head, and Tobias is confronted with a human in danger, he realizes his humanity, and he and his friends team up to take out a water truck.
Hell yeah. Very good.
Yeah, I know. Every time Miranda goes, I'm like, oh, that was what the book was about. I'm going to try to go. Tobias, well out on a reflective fly, sees a mysterious, invisible water truck and vows with his friends to destroy it. Along the way, he wrestles with whether he's a bird or a human.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Am I human? Or are we raptor?
Wanted raptor.
For a change of pace, Chris is actually going to do 12 sentences.
Yeah, you bet. So
They're all short exclamations. This book, I love it.
period. Resident freak Tobias risks everything. I don't want to make this pun, but it feels like it's right here.
Do it.
For some tail. Ultimately getting his birdie love killed.
No.
Spoiler
Nicely
alert.
done.
Yeah,
I feel like somehow we described 3 different books.
we all touched on very different aspects of the book.
So I thought that the opening of this book was bizarre.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's really moment to moment in this opening here.
But most importantly, we meet Dealin Dan and Price Cut Polly.
Have to bring Dealin Dan back. We have to
Dealin
bring
Dan.
He better be the new big villain.
Those sales really were too good to be true.
I really am interested into the whole subplot of whether or not this is the Yerk acting as Dealin Dan. Not dealing.
Dealin with an
Dealin.
apostrophe.
Yes.
I feel like that would make sense because what Dealin Dan does is not something a human would do.
You had too
Yeah.
much fun while you were saying that.
Oh, hush. It
But
wasn't
you're
planned.
right. Don't do as Dealin Dan does.
Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. So Dealin Dan owns a car dealership, and after Tobias's quick catch-up, I'm a bird, I don't remember what I look like, it's all very sad.
I'm Burb.
And burp, that's me.
It me. Burb.
So I guess he and Rachel had hatched a plan.
Hatched.
Yeah.
You better watch your foul language there.
Oh.
Like, this book had to open in the middle of this scene because the setup would have been ridiculous because, like, the fact that we just meet Dealin Dan and he has a captive red-tailed hawk and is shooting a live commercial where, like, if she had to introduce all these pieces, it would have been...
Yeah, like everybody knows there's going to be this live commercial. Like they've been given enough advance
The
warning.
whole town knows.
That like Rachel and Tobias are like, we know, and we know the details. We know he has the hawk. So is this Price Cut Polly seems like a character though.
I should have been calling her Price Cut Polly in my head this whole book.
Oh my god, you're right. I totally forgot that was Polly. Well, when you hear Polly, you think parrot. And
Parrot,
not
yes.
a red-tailed hawk. And so I
Yeah.
totally...
I was so annoyed that it wasn't a parrot.
Why didn't they? Parrots weren't hard to come by in the 90s,
No,
were they?
they're
They
not.
were still
I'm pretty
popular
sure you
pets.
can just have them as pets. Yeah, like you don't have
In
to
fact,
get a hawk.
I think it might be illegal to just cage a red-tailed hawk. Like,
Wait, so was this a thing?
what, live commercials? Were live commercials
Yeah.
a thing? Not
You
that I
remember-
know of.
I don't know.
I cannot.
Why?
I
Why
cannot
would-
imagine a live commercial being a real thing. I think like I can think on like national television, like on the Today Show, not some like tiny used car lot in the sticks, like is gonna be renting a transmitter
Yeah.
to like broadcast like during what, the high school football game or
Yeah,
something?
are they gonna then keep the commercial to run at later times
Yeah.
as a taped version? Or are they just like blowing all their money on this one ad spot? They're like, is this gonna be the big one.
I hope I get it right. You know, like when you read a sci-fi book and something impossible happens and it just goes one step too far? Well, for me, this is that moment in this book. Like, I don't care about all the other stuff. I don't care about, like, scooting across the sky. I don't care about any of it. The thing that I don't believe is that Dealin Dan could even afford to get his act together to record a live commercial. That's the hill I'm dying on. All right.
Tobias busts in on this live commercial to try to break the caged red-tailed hawk, Price Cut Polly, out of her cage. And he's just like, oh, what a surprise. We better take care of that. Like, just
Yeah.
like...
And then he starts to sound like a boss from a PlayStation 1 video game where he's like, swing your wrenches at him, fellas.
Go for the knees.
Go for the knees.
Dean, Tobias, and Rachel have to rescue this hawk. Like, if they're trying to stay undercover, they didn't need to rescue the hawk during the live commercial. It's not like this is the one moment where...
This is the only time they know where she'll be.
Yeah,
She's kept
like,
at a very secure location in between live taping.
I mean, here's the thing. If you have a pet hawk, you let it fly, right? Like, I'm not a falconryerist, but, like, you have a hawk or a falcon and you put the little hood on them and you send them out
And
their
they
way
don't do that at all. They don't do anything to calm her down. She's not in a hood. She's not being handled by, like, a falconer. They're just like, we're some dudes. We have a hawk in a cage. That's Price Cut Polly.
Cleo and Dan went to the hawk's cage to feed her. It was locked with a bike-style combination lock. 4 numbers. I'm wondering if these numbers are significant. Because why the hell? See, I'm just like, this book is made to, like, make young conspiracy theorists. Because I want Dealin Dan to come back, and I want to know what the significance of the numbers 8125 are.
I just got that his name is Dealin Dan Hawk, too, and that's why he has a red-tailed hawk.
Oh, thank you.
But why is he named Polly?
Even more reason not to name the bird Polly.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
But what do you name a hawk?
Tobias.
Tony! You name him Tony! God, I'm an idiot.
Tony? Wait, what's
in
Tony?
In the 90s especially.
Tony Hawk!
Oh, shit.
Antonia Hawk. Her name is
Antonia
Antonia Hawk.
Antonia Hawk. So this is the beginning of many poor plans in this book. That's, yeah.
Yeah, one could say it's the meta-narrative of the book is that nobody's got a plan. And that we're just winging it this time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. I do want to talk about, so I like the onomatopoeia we've got going for the hawk call, the seer. Seer is what she does. And that feels right.
You should have heard the guy on the audiobook.
What is
This book had so many annoying... we'll get sued, but I will find a way.
I said.
No.
It's actually pretty good.
No. I read
imagine listening to that
on
Imagine the best was listening to it on a car ride and just like all the animal noises and be like, if this red light doesn't change, people are gonna think I'm the weirdest person.
Okay, so they break the hawk out.
Tobias manages to peck in the combination with his beak. 8125. Gonna remember those numbers till I die.
I don't know what it would mean. I don't know what it would mean. I'm sitting here going, what would 8125 mean?
So it's 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times 8 equals 24. That's the...
His winning game of 24.
I can't believe I didn't make that joke. Oh, man. Oh, boy. So Tobias pegs in this code. Pegs?
Pegs?
Yeah.
I didn't realize this book was... oh, you have my attention. Yeah.
To distract, we've got Rachel in the wings. It's another bird pun. But she's not a bird. She's an elephant. And we have the most wonderful line from Dealin Dan. Dealin Dan gets to go, oh my lord. Forget the bird. There's an elephant stomping over the convertibles. I just think he's Southern, just slightly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get the vibe too. I don't know why.
I would have smiled if I'd had a mouth. This is your boys can't smile now. And then they get the hawk free, and this is where Tobias's confusing feelings begin.
This whole diatribe about like, I freed her, but she doesn't know what being freed by me is. She just knows the sky.
This is the person who read your book.
Yeah, you're doing your audiobook voice.
Not how I heard it, Chris.
It is the person who read. I freed her. I live in my parents' basement. Oh.
When he sees the bird flying away,
And right then I had the strangest feeling like I should go with her, like I should be with her. And he's going to continue to have these feelings throughout the book.
and I would argue that they're not, at least not clearly to him, they're definitely not romantic feelings. Because the part of him that wants it is the hawk, and he goes over multiple times that the hawks don't really have romantic feelings. But
But
he also,
they do have, I assume they have boning down feelings.
yeah.
What do you mean by romantic?
Well, there's, your romantic and then your sexual orientations. They can be different.
Okay, all right.
But, he's not, in love with the hawk, but there's a part of his hawk body that knows it should want to be with her.
This is like
That's what
Rachel
I
with the
was saying.
tomcat.
Yeah, like Rachel with knowing to be afraid of the other tomcat, even though she as a person is not afraid of the tomcat. He never lays it out as being like a sexual feeling, but I feel like that's what's strongly implied.
There's undertones of how he complains about the feeling that feel culturally that to me, but maybe I'm just projecting.
And I feel like part of what they must have been playing with, with wrestling, with what the animal part of them wants, and it kind of feels like there's hormonal things, puberty things.
Yeah,
going on.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the obligatory heterosexual relationship because everybody thinks it's normal and my body feels like that could be a thing.
Right.
But then
right.
inside, he's a human.
Still
and
wants
so he
to date
still
humans.
wants to date humans, even
Right.
though his outside is not equipped to do so in particular.
They're adding H to LGBTQ. Plus
Hentai?
8. Oh, sorry. They're adding another H.
I was asking what this H stands for.
Oh, it's for human.
The way that the book talks about it too, it is more they don't make it very physical. It's not described in terms of how Tobias feels. It's more this abstract.
That's true.
longing.
That's true.
I mean, I think that's what I don't think she can describe it in
Right.
that way. Though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think the book's innocent, most generous read, me being an adult child aside, I do think that it's a valid read.
I think there's also a possibility that, obviously we tend to anthropomorphize creatures and assume that they have similar ways of thinking about things that we do, and this book pretty clearly lays out that that is not the case. And so that may be as simple as a hawk's urge to be with a mate is.
Yeah,
it may not be any more explicit.
That's right. So
Yeah.
to put it succinctly, it would be an anthropomorphization to say that hawks have feelings of boning down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually think the books have been good across the board at really not doing that, though. Really,
Agreed.
Animals are not like people
in
these books. And it's scary and confusing that they're not like people.
All right, so they ditch out. Rachel finds a place to morph back. It's mentioned,
Yes.
I have a note here, she had 2 curved tusks, each about as long as a child. I want to know what age child we're talking. That's a very broad description. Legally a child? Anyone under 18? I thought that was vague. But
Here's mine. The ropey tail was sucked up like a piece of spaghetti. Oh man, what is it about tails just getting sucked in? What is it? It's every book so far.
is in my heart the problem that foreign bodies usually go out of that?
No, I think
Usually.
it's not that.
It's the sucking.
It's the sucking. It's not that things don't go in. I'll be frank, but I think it's the idea of a vacuum being produced in that part of the body.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's pretty disturbing. The tusks schlooped. I totally missed that verb the first time.
schlooped.
The tusks schlooped back into her mouth and divided into sparkling teeth. She was a very pretty girl, beautiful even, except that she still had a 2-foot-long gray nose.
Oh, yes.
yeah,
I actually do have schlooped highlighted in my copy of the book.
I can't believe none of us made a note about it. Tobias describes Rachel as having long, coltish legs, and I don't like the when coltish. I mean, it's especially weird because it's the whole animal thing, but because isn't a colt a type of horse?
Yeah.
It's a young male horse.
She has boy
but
legs.
also-
Get over it.
Yeah. So anyway, they split up.
Then she walks barefoot in a leotard into some random bodega.
I was like, I hope they sell shoes.
Yeah, do you sell flip-flops here? Quickly, the store clerk points to a sign that says no shoes, no service, and she says, I see.
Yeah, and then Tobias goes flying. There's a lot of questions of, like, is Tobias trapped now as a hawk, or is he free because he's a hawk? And the way that she introduces this is he flies past an office building, and some square businessman points out and smiles at him. And I just thought that moment was so funny.
I read
Very
somewhere in
cinematic.
interviews that is actually the founder of Scholastic. I'm just kidding.
He watched me soar up in a way, and I knew he was jealous. Big, important businessman. I don't think he's coming back for another book, but
That was Dealin Dan's dad.
that's what I was just thinking, his brother. They've gone in such different directions. One, an artist, and the other.
So there's a team meeting. Tobias is on his way to the team meeting, and he thinks he sees something. Like almost an absence of a thing. A hole in the sky, he calls it, and he tries to follow it, but he loses it over the suburbs, no less.
Yeah, he knows that it seems to be moving away
From the mountains.
Away
Yeah,
from the
it's-
mountains?
And he's like, well, that probably wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Then he goes to the meeting at Rachel's house.
But he has a little private thought speech with Rachel before they go in. They're like, what do you think Marco's gonna say?
I bet you his
Yeah.
first word, the first thing he'll say is, "Are you insane?" And
Yep.
Do you think that Rachel, because this is like a little bit of a flirty interaction, do you
Yeah.
think like it's really adding a whole nother layer to like the teenage, like figuring out who you're attracted to and why, and now Rachel is wrestling with this like the bird thing?
As we
Does
all
she,
do.
that's why she
Yeah.
keeps the photo, right? Because she's like, I'm attracted to Tobias, but this is who I am attracted
Yes,
to.
not the bird, not
yeah,
the
not
bird.
the bird, not the bird.
A little bit the bird.
A little bit the bird.
I don't know when they planned this team meeting, because there's no texting yet, right? But
No.
Yeah.
they have it almost immediately after the live commercial, which apparently everyone was tuned in for. And I like this team meeting. I like this. I think it's going to be fun with every one of the first books where everyone's going to get turned to narrate to see like how that person feels about everyone. So we kind of get like, I find Tobias and Marco from Tobias's point of view really interesting because he says that they'll never be close friends. So as they're freaking out about this commercial, Tobias is kind of updating us about how he feels about everyone in the group.
Yeah,
I think
giving us the group dynamic from his perspective.
Yeah, from his
Yeah,
bird's
yeah.
eye view. I think like one of the funnier moments is when Marco reminds them that they're not supposed to be rescuing animals, which like I just imagine as a callback to them having to explain to Cassie that her idea wouldn't work. But anyway,
We're not rescuing animals. He makes pointed eye contact with Cassie.
I was thinking, if Tobias is going to tell anyone about his attraction to this, or whatever it is to this, it's a form of attraction to the other hawk, Cassie's like, this is all part of my plan. She's
Now,
like,
red
"Go for
tails
it,
aren't
Tobias."
endangered, but that doesn't mean I don't support it. Like,
Yeah.
so Marco, yeah, he does sort of a rundown on Marco. He's like typical smart aleck, always confident. Which always confident is not a read that I actually get on, is an interesting read on Marco because
Yeah.
he's like extroverted and performative, but he's not confident.
yeah, but I think it's interesting to see that Tobias thinks of him
feels
as
he's
always
confident.
confident.
And then he says, he's short, or at least he's not tall. I guess girls think he's cute because he has this long brown hair and dark eyes.
So Tobias thinks Marco's cute.
Yeah,
I guess,
I think-
I guess
yeah.
girls
Girls
think he's cute.
cute.
Yeah. And if they're anything like me, it's his dark hair and his...
Yeah, it's very similar to Jake's. You know, I don't like to say this, but my cousin's smoking. Like,
Look, it makes me uncomfortable too. But
Tobias is also, unlike Rachel, completely sold on Jake as leader.
yeah.
yeah,
He says Jake is one of those people who are natural leaders. If you were ever trapped in a burning building, you would turn to Jake and ask, what do we do?
We leave.
I
don't
also
have one of
remember
those.
being so scandalized as a kid reading this book because Marco says he'll do some guerrilla commando ninja SWAT team Hawk from Hell attack, and I couldn't
hell.
believe that he said hell.
Did
which
you
was a good
immediately run and
sign.
show your
Said
mom?
the HE double hockey sticks.
I remember reading that and being so scandalized, and that's how you know I wasn't friends with Chris yet, because I didn't know all of the curse words.
You knew it. You knew enough to be shocked.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
I don't swear anymore. I've never sworn.
Oh,
this
Jake
where-
mentions putting food in the attic for Tobias.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's where we
learned
hear,
that Jake's
like-
been feeding him up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before the end, there's also a sad little comment from Tobias about, all I saw was that I had no home, but they didn't really understand. I hadn't had a real home since my parents died. I was used to being alone. I feel like we have this flavor of narration the whole book, which is poor Tobias.
Oh,
Like,
poor
Yeah.
Tobias.
Yeah.
Also, the "and I had the sky." I was making.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just.
Closes the chapter with that devastating line. And I had the sky.
Thank you for bringing in the audiobook
You
voice.
should really hear the guy who read Tobias. It was intense.
So Tobias decides to go back looking for the thing he did or didn't see. He talks about the animal instincts and that he hasn't eaten something alive yet, but he thinks about it. And when he's thinking about it, he thinks about Marco making a joke.
Yeah,
And, like,
about
that's just,
him eating
like-
mice or a roadkill. Yeah.
That makes me so sad. Like,
I know.
he's like thinking about being teased for something he hasn't even done.
But there's like all this shame. It's like a big thing
Yeah.
in this book is the shame that Tobias has about acting like an animal.
Well, which like ties back into that thing of like unexplainable urges and that shame as well.
Yeah. I feel like he's just really alienated from the group all book,
For most of the book, yeah.
which is interesting because Rachel was too, but for Tobias, it's because he's like, Rachel was a cat.
Yes.
Yeah. And like going into the basement alone. But Tobias is like, the whole book is about how he is not like the rest
And
of the
he's
group.
like forced to be alone. It's not like Rachel where she was alone because she was on a mission. Like Tobias can't go the places that his friends are going in their normal everyday lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's othered in a very different way. One little bit of color that I really liked in this chapter. Man, you should see the way those turkey buzzards can work those thermals. Awesome. He's just
Yeah.
like talking of how awesome turkey buzzards are flying, and I just like so many chapters begin with what I am now internally referring to as hot thermal action.
Yeah. And then he also says, geese always seem to be on a mission. Like, get out of our way. We're geese and we're coming through. Like, he just has so many more opinions about birds now. So he sees the airship again because a group of geese fly into it, right? He's watching
Yeah.
them. They're in the V.
It's horrific.
Yeah, it is horrific. This whole description is disturbing. Just seeing geese get like flattened and torn apart by something you can't even see.
And he also says the crippled goose slid through the air. It slid horizontally, rolling and flopping like it was passing over the top of a racing train. What does that mean?
It sounds really gruesome. And then he bothers to say my favorite thing about Yerk's opinions of geese. It flew on, unconcerned. But then why would the Yerks care about a handful of geese? And that's what they were. I was certain geese.
Years. Years.
This is where the Yerks get really reintroduced as a visceral, no pun intended, threat.
Yeah, and also I didn't catch this the first time, but everywhere the geese hit, I could catch little glimpses of steel gray metal.
Yeah, it's like it
Yeah.
was
So when
breaking
they-
through the cloak.
Then we go to another team meet. There's lots of team meetings in this book.
I think this one was called in response to this. I feel like
Yes.
it feels like Tobias ran to tell them.
Yeah.
He went
How
around
do you-
screaming until everybody showed up at Jake's house again. Or
No,
I guess
Cassie's
we're
barn,
Cassie's,
Cassie's
sorry.
barn, because it's the only place he doesn't look weird.
He doesn't look out
Yeah.
of place, yeah.
How do you think Tobias calls a meeting? Yeah, I mean, does he voice?
Scream!
Because I feel like if it were Rachel or Jake, we might even get like a meeting that Tobias isn't at because they're at like school or something. But
Yeah.
we can't get the school sections here.
So I guess he just waits until everybody's home. He says it was around sundown, doesn't he, that he saw it?
Yeah.
So he can just go to someone's house and thought speak to someone to call a meeting.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they're just doing more regular meetings, too. I mean, like, wouldn't you? If, like, we were in this position... I mean, we're making a podcast and we do regular meetings.
And it's like if one of your friends couldn't be there every day, you'd probably make sure to schedule times that you see that friend because
Yeah, like the fourth person who's on this podcast I forget their name, but they can never make it.
They have wolves in the barn.
yes, they have
already.
Half
two
wolves?
injured wolves. Yes, one
learned
whole
it.
So they're going
wolf,
to put them
two
together to
half
make
wolves.
one
Yeah.
wolf.
Wolves make hawks a little edgy, so Tobias is a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, some sort of weird animal racism going on there. I don't really understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they'd ever be involved with each
So they're
other.
talking about this probably being a Yerk ship, with the cloaked ship that Tobias saw, and like why they would suddenly start cloaking their ships because they've seen other ships like bug fighters and the blade ship.
Yeah, the cloaking ability discovery actually feels really huge, just as like an exploration of Yerk technology, which, you know, we don't really have an understanding of what Yerk technology actually is, just to go into it for a second. It's more that they take over other alien species that have technology. So like the bug fighter, is that Andalite or is that a Hork-Bajir ship? This huge ship, is that a Taxxon ship? The Taxxons are the ones on the bridge. Like, it stands to reason maybe it is a Taxxon ship. I don't know.
We have no idea how many races they've taken control of. We just know that they seem to have full control of those two races. So this could be from any number of places. Even if they didn't take full control of a planet, they could have still made away with their technology. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we've discovered, this huge ship flying towards we don't know where. Okay, so we got our first talk of Chekhov's wolves. And then we talk about how like scientists have reintroduced them to the area, which is actually something that did happen in our childhood. That's
Which
cool.
I think, I still think that they're in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
Is my theory as to where.
Yeah, that's
there's
the
a
vibe
lot
that I
of
get
wooded
too.
area.
So then Marco launches into yelling at everyone again.
It's what he does best.
It's what he does best. He starts yelling about, like, if they're heading to the mountains, like, why do you think we'll be able to find this? You know, like, the mountains are huge. Do you guys even know what you're talking about? Like, we're not just going to, like, stumble across them in the mountains. And somebody says something annoying. Rachel probably says something about, well, we better start looking then.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Well, so they deduce that they're going to the mountains because it was flying too low to
Get
go over
it?
the mountains.
Yeah.
Marco is talking, like he always does, about why should they risk their lives. And then he says, sooner or later, we'll slip up. And I find this to be an interesting thing that Marco says, because I think they've slipped up both books so far, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like they've been slipping up this entire time.
Rachel got taken captive.
But sooner or later, we'll be standing here around here crying because Jake or Rachel or Cassie or Tobias is gone. Interesting point. Tobias is a fucking bird.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's stuff to cry about already.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty major mistake. And then Tobias uses his own situation as sort of like a cudgel and is like, listen, I'm the one who got hurt and I'm not giving up. So
such bad logic. And while they're having this plan, like, Jake starts yelling at Marco.
it's true.
Right? He's like, I've had it up to here with you. I'll kick you out of this group.
I don't know that he goes that far.
He says, I'm the leader. I'm the best animal.
Rachel definitely goes that far to be like, you know what, if you don't want to be in this, you can not be in this. Like, she says, I'm tired of trying to talk you into this.
Marco accuses Rachel of getting off on the danger.
He does. He
Like, so
says
they-
that. Those words.
It's like an undeniable call out on Rachel. Like, and Marco has plenty of evidence for that to be true.
Everybody is like, you went too far.
That's just because Marco's on the outs. Even Cassie is picking on Marco right now. Like, if this were a game of Survivor, Marco might be next off the island.
Though Marco's making good points, like, I mean, no, not tomorrow in the morning. Tomorrow's a school day. If we all skip school on the same day and later, there's some trouble with the Yerks. Don't you think Chapman might put two and two together? I don't think so. But then, so they go to the mountains. I think this is probably Tobias should have just done this book on his own, because Tobias sets up, we all have bird morphs, but we couldn't all become birds because then we'd have to fly together. No, they don't. They don't have to fly together. I don't think anyone's...
You
so
can
we
just
should all
fly-
just become wolves.
Yeah, and I don't get it because it's like, you love geese so much, go fucking pet a goose, man.
They mentioned geese in this book.
And then you fly there as a freaking V. You know?
Yeah.
Quack,
That's true.
quack.
Everybody knows where they can touch a goose. A goose will touch you against your will. Like,
Look at all these chickens. But why did, like, seriously, why didn't they acquire another bird morph? Like, it really fucking, like, go hug a robin, go squeeze an egg. I don't know what you have to do, but just, like...
It is just because K.A. Applegate wants to have them morph into wolves.
Yes.
which don't we all?
We all do, yeah. And we all want Marco to be the
girl wolf.
The girl wolf.
We've all been dying for Marco to realize this about himself.
This is a seed planted for fan fiction. That is
Yes.
what.
Do you guys even know about the Alpha Beta Omegaverse? Like, do you know about the Omegaverse? We're not getting into
No.
it. Don't worry about it. You don't want to know. It's fine. We're moving
Bonus
on.
episode.
No, I literally have to know.
We can discuss it later.
So Marco fails a coin flip, and they can only have one male wolf, supposedly, because they'll compete. They won't be
Because the
able to
male
control
will
the
want
wolf
to be the
brain.
alpha, yeah. Which is like, a lot of it's like pretty debunked, but at the time, I think it was in step with what we knew about wolves. Since these are two wolves that don't know each other, that could even be valid, that like their pack structure would fall like that. But if it was the same wolf, would they
True.
fight for dominance?
Yeah, then
I
they'd already
wonder.
be on top.
So
Yeah.
they might just be like, I don't know if it's safe to have two of the same wolf that are fighting for dominance, but apparently they don't think the female is going to be very dominant because they can all be the girl wolf, and it will never fight for dominance because there's never been a female alpha, I guess.
It really underlines that they are kind of a visitor into the animal's brain because they're just piloting the animal that they've morphed into.
They're getting better at it. There's a moment where Cassie says, I'm afraid your primitive male behavior might slow us down. And then shortly after that, Cassie and Rachel give each other discreet high fives.
Yeah, like Cassie says that and just sticks her hand out, and like Rachel's just like, yeah.
For some reason, I just really love that.
So yeah, so they talk about gender for a while, and they talk about, they just have a nice open conversation about gender.
But
It's
the
really
difference
beautiful
between
for the
biological
90s.
sex and gender, it's fine.
Right? Yeah,
It's great. It's
beautiful.
actually really healthy.
Cassie morphs first, right?
It's
Tobias says
morphful.
she's never quite as gross as the others. All over her body, the fur replaced the bright pinks and greens of her leaves. Okay, this is something I've been waiting to talk about. And finally, I got to this book. It makes no sense that skin-tight clothing morphs with them. That makes no sense.
It does not. And if
It's
they
true,
if,
but I already chose my thing that's game breaking.
if they were adults and this was HBO, they'd do it naked.
The movie's coming out in the next couple years, right? So how are they going to handle that?
They're gonna hand wave that out. They're gonna say that's a problem you never needed to solve. I would literally bet a nickel that they don't do leotards.
They're going to be older teenagers played by adults, probably, and then they're
Yeah.
going to do like the Riverdale version. I feel
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
Or even, they could go the Euphoria version and just have them be naked. And it's like, okay, so we're all okay that these are like 15, we're all pretending that it's okay to see, quote unquote 15-year-olds naked just because they're played by 22-year-olds. Like, we're all just fine with that? Okay.
All over her body, the fur replaced the bright pinks and greens of her leotard. A tail suddenly shot out from behind. I could hear the grinding of her bones as they rearranged. Fingers shriveled and disappeared, leaving behind only stubby black nails.
Stop.
Wait, the best part, it's coming. There was a sickening crunch as her knees changed direction. Her legs shrank and thinned and grew fur. Suddenly she fell forward, no
God.
longer able to stand erect.
Sam, I hear, 1 out of 4.
Jake says, let's get busy. Jake said the 2-hour clock is now running. TikTok.
I'm sorry.
And then one by one, they each stole a glance at me. I'm the handy reminder of what happens if you stay in a morph for too long. Which comes up, like, how everyone else views Tobias as, like, a bad outcome. That's important. I still think Tobias, he doesn't say it in this book, but I feel like he kind of purposely stayed as...
I agree. I think it was a purposeful experiment that he now regrets.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I think he definitely thought he was doing it on purpose, and I think there probably was a moment where he wanted to backpedal, but he waited just too long. wrong.
New theory.
New theory.
He has extra information about morphing. He hasn't told the rest of the book from the Andalite.
That's possible.
He might know something.
So apparently the biggest job that an alpha wolf has is to pee really often.
On everything, yeah. And Tobias gets really sad as he watches them all turn into morphs. Did we cover that already?
No.
No, that's good.
But you
He's
can,
super-
Tobias
he's
is
super
really
jelly
sad
of
as he
the
watches
wolf
Jake
morphs.
pee on everything because he's like, being a hawk is cool, but getting to pee like a wolf.
I think the book really picks up here once Jake starts peeing on everything.
And I can't stress this enough. Pissing on everything.
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 Maybe Rachel asks, why did you drink too much soda before we left? Where did Jake get all the pee? When you drink water in the human morph, do you bring the water with you?
We sort of had this conversation before about...
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just stuck on it.
No, we sort of
I
had
mean,
this
I think this
conversation
is more evidence.
about the spider that Jake
Right.
eats in the first book,
Yeah.
and whether
That
or not
wriggled
he'd
in-
be full
wriggled
when
and
he
jiggled
morphed back.
inside Jake.
I said that I thought it stayed in his stomach, but it stayed the same size it was when he ate it. So if a wolf has a smaller bladder than a human, which I don't know if that's true, it could be the same size, it could be larger, but I don't know. I assume those fluids would stay with you. I have no reason to believe this, but I do.
I'll tell you what, if bones can crack and spines can crunch and nothing bad happens, I don't think it fucking matters how much pee you have in your bladder. Nothing matters about morphing. I just think, like, if your bone can crack, why would the liquid in your bladder be unperturbed by the process? Why would that not be considered of you?
So,
Sorry, you're fine.
See, this is becoming a philosophical thing because it's like, if I eat food and it's sitting in my stomach and I die, is that food in my stomach or is that a part of Chris?
That's a good question.
I really think we need to start compiling a list of these questions. And I think the fun ones, like if the pee and like
Fun ones,
are better.
like the pee.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing.
Because I think we can get Michael Grant.
He's not going to want to come on after what I'm about to say.
No. I think he is. I don't know, Miranda, how many interviews you've watched. He goes
Not a
on
lot.
all. Kay Applegate doesn't go on any of the Animorphs podcasts. Michael Grant goes on all of them. He does not. The difficulty of getting Michael Grant on your podcast seems to be rather low. He sits there. He talks for 3 hours and smokes a cigar the whole time. I think we can get him, and no one else is asking him the tough
I think it's
questions
going
that
to
we
be
have.
harder. I think it's going to be harder to get him now that you said on our podcast that he'll do literally any podcast.
Miranda can cut that.
I don't think she is, though.
But should I? It's pretty funny.
And here's why he won't be on the podcast. Gender, like sex changing while morphing, like that equipment change falls into a similar category of like fluids you contain versus fluids you don't contain that are to be other from your body. Morphing while pregnant. These are all the questions
Those
we
are
need
really
to know.
important questions.
These are really important questions.
Oh my god, yeah, if they
Just
acquired
morph
the
into an
morph,
endangered species while pregnant and produce... would the fetus morph with you?
we weren't giving Cassie enough credit.
Oh
Yes.
my god! You have a little wolf cub fetus inside you.
Does it
Oh
depend
my
on
God.
viability? Like, what's going on?
Adorable.
That's adorable. We all agree that that's adorable, K.A. Applegate. We're not criticizing you for the baby wolf cub that's inside us all right now, okay?
No,
We're not
you're
criticizing
right
you for
though.
that.
But also, if they acquired the morph of a pregnant animal, could they all just keep morphing into the pregnant animal and they just spit out a bunch of babies? They just keep coming back and morphing.
Maybe this is what Cassie meant.
Yeah, no, I think-
Maybe we made fun of her too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they could be like a wolf factory. They just
They could have an army of wolves.
that's actually a better point.
The gene
That's how
pool would
you
still
fight
be
the
super
Yorks.
limited, though, because you'd be putting out the same baby over and over, and they'd all,
All the
be the
more
same
reason.
sex.
Did we talk about owls yet? Let's go.
Howling, no owls. Ow, ow, ow.
Howling. Oh, this was so
Someone needs to
embarrassing.
do the sound effect.
This was so embarrassing to listen to in the book.
Ow, yow, yow. Ooh, what's the yow, yow doing
Oh, the
there?
ooh, yow, ow, ow.
Chapter 7.
Sounds like my cat at 3 a.m.
It was Jake who started it. It caught everyone by surprise, including Jake himself. Oh, yo, yo,
It gets
What the-
better.
Marco started to say, but then he was doing it too. Yo-yo, Cassie and Rachel weren't far behind.
No!
Ooh, yo, woo.
He's never heard a wolf before. He's never heard a wolf before.
I don't think he's ever heard anything before.
I was in the car listening to that and I was so embarrassed I turned beet red.
So we howl for a bit. Tobias is very jealous of being able to morph. Some of the things he says start to indicate to me that he's viewing morphing into a human as a morph and not like...
Interesting.
Because he says, maybe he'd ask them about it later, and it says, then you could ask them what it's like to be human. Maybe they can tell you about that too, I thought bitterly. And he says, stop it, Tobias. I ordered myself. And so that to me, shows that he's putting being human in a dark place in his mind. But somewhere in his mind, he's putting being human at the same place as morphing into a wolf. So, they're just two things he can't do anymore.
Yeah, he also says, I guess I felt that if I ever started to feel sorry for myself, I might never stop. Which I thought was a nice little character moment. Going off of, the never having had a home thing.
So you see some cars driving up a dirt road. It's the Park Service. But then they have guns.
Yeah, instead of being Park Service, they're heavily armed militia.
This is all wrong.
These guys don't act or move like park rangers. These guys move like an army.
Okay, so that's another thing I thought was interesting. The Yeerks are taking over humans in these roles, right? In the park ranger role. Mm-hmm. They're moving like the army. Do the Yeerks know how to pilot the human controllers? Do they know military techniques that military people would use?
They don't have YouTube, so
That's
if
true.
they
It was
do,
the 90s.
they have to have actually observed it somehow.
Yeah.
They probably watched Patton.
Braveheart.
Yeah.
They had the Yeerks in the humans who are park rangers. They all had to learn how to fire an automatic weapon, presumably, because...
Yeah, I guess.
So, but then they see two college students, right? The park rangers approach college students.
Yeah, they just scare him off. Tobias says maybe they said there was a forest fire, and I just really like the image of someone walking up to you with a submachine gun and being like, you need to go. There's a fire.
They're there to look for a giant invisible ship in the sky, and it takes Tobias seeing the Hork-Bajir to be like, oh, those are the Yeerks, too.
Tobias then is on his way back to tell his friends that he saw some Hork-Bajir and some humans, and he's like, all right, we're on the right track. He's like, yes, 5 wolves, those are my friends, and he drops down, and he's like, you guys are acting weird, and they won't thought speak back to him, and he's like, guys, chill out. And then he realizes that he doesn't have 5 friends, he has 4 friends.
Wait a second, I don't have 5 friends.
And he has just stumbled across a completely separate pack of wolves.
Which he neglects to mention when he finally does regroup with his
That is true.
friends. He doesn't warn them at all that there are enemy wolves in
That's
the
true. When he
territory.
finally escapes and does get back to his friends, he says, is that you guys? And Marco asks, who else would it be? And Tobias just says, don't ask. Doesn't warn them about the pack of apex predators wandering near them.
Yeah, Tobias tells them he saw Hork-Bajir and the armed Yeerks, right? They don't have much time left in the morph, but they're close to the lake. They find a lake that's where they're all congregating. All the Yeerks. They have about 40 minutes left, but the lake is about 5 minutes away, so they agree that they're just going to go in the morphs and see whatever's happening with the Yeerk activity quickly.
Right. I do want to point out briefly, at some point they start referring to the park rangers as park ranger controllers.
Yeah,
and
that's buck wild.
I
That
just
is
think
buck
that's
wild.
really funny. It's not human controllers who are park rangers. It is park ranger controllers. A subspecies of human, the park ranger, can be found in national parks all over the United States.
Not a great human host to acquire.
A park ranger?
For
Unless you're going to
Yeah.
be in parks a lot, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah.
Although, really, let's be honest, just to be clear, they just need to acquire humans and then outfits for park rangers.
Yeah. Or like a supervisor position who can just hire them for the paperwork.
Like, we don't even know that these are park rangers. We just know that they're dressed like them. It's like, I recognize them as park rangers because I know every park ranger in this park.
I like the idea of them waiting for their guy on the inside to climb the ranks at the park. At the like, don't worry, a couple more months and I'll get that promotion. I can get my butt hired.
If they're doing that, I think I'm cheering for the Yerks, and I want the books from their perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree
want
with
the
that.
book where Ralph climbs he takes over the national park
in
service.
his 598.
Okay, so we go off to this lake to observe, and
Yeah.
Tobias again sees the invisible ripple in the sky, except it stops
Not
being
quite in the
invisible.
sky.
It stops being in the sky, too. That's kind of true.
It comes lower down and it
And
stops being invisible. And
Tobias says to the others, "Don't act suspicious or freak, but look up."
oh my god, is what Rachel says. She sounds exactly like that.
And Cassie cries, it's huge! And then Tobias says, it was huge. But the word huge doesn't really begin to describe it, which I just don't
think
find
it-
very helpful.
I also think I disagree. Like, I think it actually does begin to describe it.
There's this moment he's saying how big it was. It's like, oh, it's bigger than the biggest jumbo jet you've ever seen, all these things. But then he's describing, like, these air intakes on, scooping air intake areas. And it says you could suck a fleet of buses in through those scoops.
Through those scoops!
Through those scoops. That really is big. That a fleet of buses. That's big.
The only windows were in a small bulge at the top. The bridge, I realized. Where's he pulling this vocabulary?
This boy watches
Yeah,
Star Trek.
Yeah, this boy watches a lot of Star Trek.
And I love every time they look through the windows, it's just the shadowy Texans inside, like, doing mischievous things.
Yeah. Suddenly, out from behind the ship, a pair of bug fighters zipped into view, so they have armed backup.
We get a new description for the size of bug fighters that I also really like. I'm sure everybody's noticed that I just really like the way sizes are described in
It's iconic
in
this
these books. They're described in size as small for spaceships. You couldn't park one in your garage, but you could land it on your front lawn.
Actually, that kind of gives me an image.
But, I don't know, as a person who doesn't have a garage and has a pretty small front lawn,
They talk about the crew of the bug fighters, too, and he says, inside was the usual crew. One Hork-Bajir and one Taxon. And I just every time that any of these children say something about something being usual, I'm just you have no fucking clue what you're talking about, dude.
Yeah, so this is where they learn that the Yerks need something, right? Which is a big moment. Because they start collecting the water. And they realize that this ship is just for delivering, resources.
They guess some sort of spaceship that's circling the Earth right now. This is how they're harvesting resources from the planet.
And when they realize that they're just sucking water up out of it, Cassie says, it's a truck. That whole huge ship is really just a truck. And I couldn't have put it more succinctly myself, honestly.
I have to cut in here. I know I'm a little late to the party, but when they were identifying these huge straws to slurp up the water from the lake, it says they're like straws. They're drinking, and then Tobias is in a monologue. He's like, I could hear the sucking sound.
In Salem's Lot, the Stephen King novel, are vampires, and they constantly, the way you know the vampires are nearby is because they say, we could hear the sucking sound. And it's just not a scary sound. It's not a sound that really raises the anxiety in a scene.
That was a powerful illustration right there. I thought you were actually talking about a real Stephen King book for a second.
Oh, it is. Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
But hear the sucking sound? That part?
Yeah.
That's real?
Yeah. Why would I just make that up?
I thought it was incredible. I was like, that's such an inventive, because you were trying to demonstrate it's the opposite of scary, which is why you picked Stephen King.
No, Stephen King just thought that was scary. The ominous sucking sound coming from the other room.
Oh my god.
He's the master of horror, Chris.
That's why. Yeah, that's why I thought you used him as an example.
No.
So we've sucked up this water. It means that we know that the Yeerks need something from Earth. It's not just something. It's not like the Kandrona rays where they can just supply it themselves. Like, they need something from this planet to function, which means there's a way for us to hurt their resources, in theory. And then, there she was. Price cut Polly herself.
The book would have been better if I saw her. I knew it was her from the moment I saw her. Price cut Polly.
Her discerning eye for prices became a discerning eye for prey.
What if in an alternate book, Tobias didn't continue his fight with the Animorphs? What if he allowed Dealin Dan to enslave him as like one of these birds for the car slot, and he became, what would Tobias's name be?
What are other things you get at a car dealership?
Price
Low
cut,
APR, Artie? I don't know.
Terrible transmission, Tobias. I don't know.
I'm just guessing that Dealin Dan would have made him something else, Paulie, but Paulie. I don't know. I don't know what he would have called him though. I don't have that much faith in Dealin Dan. I know Chris does, but
I think he's a great character. I think he's really deep.
As he's seeing the hawk, he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go glide near her so she sees me." But then he's like, "Well, it wasn't like we were friends. Hawks don't know what friend means."
I like that Tobias knows that she's like a symbol for him of like freedom, because he's really goes on about freedom in this book, but he knows that he's not a symbol for her. He says hawks don't have that sort of emotion either about gratitude for him saving her. In fact, in her mind, there may have been no connection between me and her freedom. Still, I soared up to her. I don't know why. And then he kind of wrestles with it. He feels really close. He's just getting into it. He's letting himself get into it. And then he goes, No! I was Tobias, a human being. I just like imagining this is really his interior monologue through this.
He banked away sharply, dramatically.
No. Part of me kept saying, it's a lie. You are the hawk is you, and Tobias is dead.
Thou art I, and I am thou.
Tobias is definitely the theater kid of the bunch, I think.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Big theater kid
He's
vibes.
going to get along with Visser 3.
Tobias flies away from his love. I'm sorry, his not love. And he goes back to his friends, and he finds the correct wolves and the wrong wolves this time. A total of 9 wolves. He's
9
like, just
wolves.
my luck. Like,
Let me tell you how it all happened.
and now they're just having some sort of stare down.
Yeah, they
Between them
really
and a
don't have
dead
the time
rabbit.
for this either. They've been in morph for like well over an hour.
Yeah,
They're
that's what Tobias realizes as he's sitting there, and he's like, well, at least it's taking my mind off the fact that I want to go live with a hawk for the rest of my life. Stupid sexy hawk. So he's like, guys, what's going on? Why are we all just staring at these wolves? And they're like, oh, well, if he moves, he loses. It's like, cool. I don't care.
Yeah, again, explain how this is relevant to Hawkboy, the boy wonder.
Tobias realizes they're fighting over this rabbit, which is not enough to feed one wolf, let alone a whole pack, so I don't know why they're fighting over it so much, but whatever.
Yeah, it's like fighting over a single cigarette, but anyway.
Tobias is like, oh, the fight's over the rabbit? All right. And he just shoots down, uses all his hawk speed to grab the rabbit. He almost gets chomped.
I think I lost some tail feathers.
He flaps for all he's worth, scooting along the ground, half carrying, half dragging the dead
forgot about
rabbit.
this scooting.
Scooting will return every book. That is my prediction.
So this was an interesting moment too, because like you realize that like Tobias has an incredible mortal fear in being embodied as an animal, which the others don't exactly directly share. It seems like when harm comes to the animal, it doesn't follow them back to their human state. But Tobias being trapped, like, you know, he's living with this body more long term. And, like, he almost gets chomped and the wolf gets some of his tail feathers. And he points out to himself that tail feathers at least grow back.
Yeah.
He flies away. He draws attention away. The normal wolves chase him. The animorphs run off into the woods. And now they have to get to a place and morph. And Tobias is like, I'm going to go find empirical evidence to scare them into morphing. I'm going to go find a clock. And I believe he finds a clock in one of the park rangers' dashboards.
Yes.
And he spies that they are, in fact, 5 minutes beyond
I believe
the
it's
morphing.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 minutes past the morphing threshold. He races back to them, tells them that they have no time to morph.
Well, actually, he says, morph!
Yeah.
And then he says, you have about 2 minutes, and then says, it was a lie.
I remember reading this part as a kid. I couldn't deal with it. I was like, the tension was... This was like the most tense book I had ever read. The cliffhangers really worked for 6-year-old, 7-year-old Eddie.
This was horribly upsetting to read as an adult. It was very uncomfortable, like listening to them go through these slow 2 to 4 minute morphs that were, or like 2 to 10 minutes.
Not Cassie.
Yeah. Cassie's is going okay, you're right. But the others, it says, we're not so lucky. And Rachel's morph is going all wrong. She's able to morph her hands back to hands, but nothing else seems to be changing. Marco manages to morph just his head, which is like horrifying.
Also kind of adorable.
And he can't even talk right for some reason. Like his head morphs back to human, but he still can't talk right.
It was an awful sound. Half human, half wolf. I agree with Chris. I think it's kind of endearing. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Marco's cute
I
no
like
matter
this
what.
Marco.
Yeah, this is the new Marco.
And then Cassie runs around like a freaking birthing coach. Like, come on, Jake, concentrate, focus, Rachel, bear down. And Marco seems to be having some of the roughest time.
The time of his life.
And he locks his eyes on poor little Tobias out there and seems to use him as
Motivation?
as a motivation.
It was like he hated me or feared me. Both, maybe. If Marco needed me so he could concentrate, that was fine. But then he says he feels how they all must see him. A freak, an accident, a sickening, pitiable creature. You really can tell that when he starts calling himself a freak of nature, that's something that's a state of mind he gets to later, where he says that kind of proudly.
I'm interested in this, though, because, we never hear about Tobias ever trying to morph back to human. Like, did he even try?
Yeah, like how late was it when it was time for him to morph back? Luckily, they all are able to morph back into being humans. Cassie coaches them through it. Marco becomes less cute, but then cute again.
There's a cute moment where Cassie is so relieved that she runs and gives Jake a hug, but she feels self-conscious, so she hugs Rachel and Marco too. And I just want to say, I've been there.
He freaked out once his friends were all human and happy, and he just kind of collapses inward.
He's really happy for them, but suddenly it's just way too much to realize that he can never go back and that he can never touch anybody the way that he would. He can't hug back. He can't hold hands.
For the podcast, Eddie's demonstrating how
bird
wings
might
very
hug.
easily could hug.
I could coach Tobias through it.
Yeah.
Have you tried, Tobias?
Yeah, if Cassie can coach those guys through that morph back to human 7 minutes late, I think we could coach Tobias into a hug. I think we could do it.
Man, this chapter ending, though, is so dramatic.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay. I flapped like a demon. Notice who calls after. Jake.
Yeah, Jake shouts after him first. Tobias!
My love! I flapped like a demon, no longer caring that I was tired. I had to fly. I had to get away. Tobias, no! Come back, Rachel cried. I caught a blessed breeze and soared up and away, my own silent, voiceless scream echoing in my head.
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, or at least until next time. See you soon!